Yeah.
And then to see him like turn around and say, we should vote for this party, I was like, are you nuts? Like, they deserve to be punished for just like completely debasing the standards of like governance. I'm here to tell you very, very quickly about how I am absolutely exploding my growth on YouTube. This tool is called Cast Magic. So, all you have to do is input your link to Cast Magic. It will give you a transcript of your entire podcast or YouTube show. It will give you all of the AI content you could ever imagine, including introductions, speaker bios, keywords, titles, timestamps, threads, promotional tweets, blog posts, and much, much more. You even get Magic Chat where people can treat your podcast like ChatGPT and ask questions about it. There's so much more. Cast Magic and use code CASTING30 to get 30% off. Okay? Thank you. I hope that was fast. Enjoy the podcast. Okay. We're off.
Jolly good.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
Lovely
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Lovely to have you here after an eventful week in British politics.
Absolutely. All change.
Hasn't it? So, where do we begin? The Tories. They've lost many, many seats. Was it as catastrophic as you thought it was going to be for them?
I had an idea, obviously, it was going to be pretty bad. Judging by all the polls, I think for the previous 18 months had all fluctuated around like 20 to 27 points was the highest I saw. So I knew it was going to be pretty bad, but that didn't take anything away from the ecstasy that I felt when they announced the exit polls. That was like, I mean, I'm not a football guy, and which is interesting because tonight is, you know, as we're recording this, is a big football game on, but I'm not a football guy, but that was as close as I could imagine to the joy that football fans feel when a striker kicks a ball in the nets thing. I'm sure I didn't even need to say that I'm not a football guy. It would have been obvious just from that sentence. But yeah,
possibly.
I had a good time. It was pretty bad for them.
I was really thinking they were going to go sub 100 on the seats. I really, really was praying. Yeah, because I just felt like they needed to be punished.
Well, it felt for a bit like they were going to slip into third-party status, didn't it? For I suppose anyone that's less familiar with parliamentary arithmetic, UK politics, you typically have, you know, a party in government, and then you have Her Majesty's opposition, and traditionally that's been Labour and Conservative, but there was a lot of people saying actually this could get so bad for the Conservative Party that the Lib Dems could overtake them. So that was the situation I was holding out for. But yeah, unfortunately, it didn't get quite that bad for them.
Do you think the rhetoric, because the rhetoric was from the Conservative Party and from Peter Hitchens exclusively in the journalistic community, that you needed to vote Conservative to stop Labour having a huge majority? Like, do you think that
supermajority?
Supermajority, exactly. Yeah. The stupid term that doesn't mean shit in British politics. Just another horrendous Americanization of our beautiful parliamentary system.
Yeah.
But do you think that had any impact on people's decisions?
I don't think it had any impact whatsoever. And I'm basing that on the fact that the polls were at, I think, 22 points down the week before they started saying that, and they didn't shift at all after they started wheeling out that line. I don't necessarily fault them from like a PR perspective for trying that one, even though it was, you know, quite flagrantly ridiculous. It seemed to me like a term that had been shopped to a few focus groups, and a few people in a focus group had gone, oh, yeah, I'm scared by that term. And so then they rolled it out to everyone on the front page of the Mail. But I don't think it had any discernible impact on the way that people voted. I think once people have got it in their head that this lot, the status quo, who have been managing things for 14 years, have fucked everything up so badly that your mortgage payments have doubled, that your energy bills have exploded. And the rhetoric that then comes out of the right-wing press, if not their politicians, is like, oh, what have we got to do about inheritance tax? Oh, what are we going to do about private school fees? You just feel completely unrepresented. And so, yeah, it just doesn't surprise me at all that it had a negligible part to play in the end results.
I mean, the thing for me that's really interesting is whether, honestly, at this point, like, because it's beautiful, you know, we got the bastards out, and I did actually, to be fair, watch people talk about how, like, some of the commentary was, oh, well, you know, it wasn't the Tories' fault that we had COVID, or it wasn't the Tories' fault that, you know, there's been massive inflation. I mean, you could blame the Bank of England, but they definitely oversaw the, you know, obscene expansion of the debt. But, like, that doesn't mean that they didn't still do a truly horrifying job of handling every single crisis. Like, they never let an opportunity go to waste to write checks to their best friends. That is the thing that really frustrated me. I'm watching, like, Peter Hitchens, like, someone who I literally had on this fucking show, right? Talking about the corruption in the COVID contracts as they were going out. Not like 9 months later when everyone else was freaking out about it. He was like pissed about them at the time. He was like, what are we doing? Yeah. And then to see him like turn around and say, we should vote for this party. I was like, are you nuts? Like, they deserve to be punished for just like completely debasing the standards of like governance.
Well, he's someone who strikes me who is, you know, firmly anchored in ideology and doctrine. So for him, it's not a question of voting with anything close to a conscience. It's a question of fear of what Labour might do. Can Labour be trusted with X, Y, and Z? So for him, absolutely, it makes sense for him to scare people or attempt to scare people away from voting for reform to split that vote, or from voting for sort of perceptively centre-right Labour Party. I do think, just to come back to what you were saying about, you know, these crises, plural, that visited the Conservative Party as they were governing, to some extent, yeah, you can say, well, they were really unlucky.
Well, you're in charge. If you're in charge for 14 years, right?
Something's going to happen,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Like, there's never like we don't get like 14 years in any period of human history of just like pure stability, nothing happening, like just sort of minor growth. Like, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
that's what it looked like. It might be what it looks like when you like zoom out on like the FTSE 100. It just looks like it's very like maybe a kid with a dip, and it just goes the whole way.
For the billionaires, it's
But I mean, that's when you zoom out. Like, what you don't see is the massive swings in between.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at like COVID, for an example, or, you know, the invasion of Ukraine, these are things that are to some extent outside of these guys' control. However, I guess the point that you're getting at is that that's your fucking job. Is like, you're in charge of this. You're supposed to be managing this stuff. And if you manage a pandemic in a situation where the public purse gets looted, it's just treated like a fucking ATM machine for donors to just go, oh yeah, I'll give you £10,000 for a tennis match with Boris Johnson. Oh, and now I've got £100 million contract. That's fucking amazing. If you treat it like that, you lose the trust of the public. And then if you mishandle the pandemic to such an extent that you get one of the worst death rates in Europe,
whilst spending more than anyone else, I think that's the and the death rate, I think, is also an indictment of the poor state of health of the country itself. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like the handling of itself. It's like how unhealthy the country was up to that point when it started.
And then you lump on some, you know, partying and, you know, breaking your own rules and on top of all of that. So yes, to some extent, they can say, well, who could have foreseen the pandemic, or who could have imagined that Putin would go mad and then invade Ukraine? But it's their management of these things, fundamentally, that land us in the situation that we're now in. I mean, I don't necessarily agree. I guess you and I will see this from different perspectives. I don't necessarily agree that the inflation is a result of a monstrous money printing effort throughout the pandemic. I know a lot of people do see it like that. I see it more like the energy markets were disrupted. the global energy markets then raised the price of gas. The UK government again did nothing to protect UK industry. They could have nationalised. They chose not to do that. Instead, they funneled magic money out to our individual energy accounts to keep the energy companies afloat. So now we're in a situation where we don't have that nationalised energy asset in the UK Treasury on the books. Also, the energy companies have made an absolute killing, and we're all still saddled with hugely expensive energy bills. So
just because they capped it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that someone's not footing the bill. And it's just us
yeah.
through the Treasury.
Well, we pay for it twice, right? Like, so now there was the energy price guarantee scheme, which protected us to some extent. They still raised the fucking cap. It's not a price cap if you keep raising it, was the line that was like rolled out constantly. So there's that. So we pay for it there, but then we also pay for it through the inflation, because all of these businesses, your barbers, your Tesco's, anyone that's running a business that has any energy account coming in and going out, raises their prices. And so, when they say, Putin's invasion of Ukraine caused the inflation, or, overspend in the pandemic caused the inflation, I'm always like, but again...
Oh, no, but the gas prices were going up way before the invasion of Ukraine.
Well, I think that is interesting.
I think it was a beautiful excuse for the gas companies to turn around and raise prices. Because whilst they were at some of their peak prices that they were charging, the wholesale price of gas was falling.
Yes, yeah. But also, so just to go back a little bit further, and I guess this ties into the COVID stuff, is so one of the other reasons, the driving factors of why energy bills were so high even before Ukraine, was coming out of COVID. We were still in the pandemic, nobody's driving around so much, businesses are shut down, the demand for natural gas tanked, a lot of these big infrastructure apparatus was wound down, and you can't just turn this shit back on.
Nobody's heating office buildings.
Yeah, so they wound down the extraction and the processing industries, and at the same time, big chunks of China and India were like coming online, for want of a better phrase, and starting to go, we need some over here. So there's this huge pull on a dwindling natural resource. And then the invasion of Ukraine spikes it again. So, when they say, we can't be blamed for this or that or the other, I'm always like, but you didn't. Like, a government's first duty should be to protect its domestic population, right? And I didn't really see much in the way of pragmatic solutions to protect us in the medium or long term. So fuck them.
No, fuck them. Like, as we were saying the other night, fuck them. Like they were so obscenely incompetent and corrupt for 14 years, and it's beautiful to have watched them like really get humbled.
Yeah.
Even though as much as I wanted it to be more.
Yeah, but I think there's an interesting thing that you're tapping into there, which is like incompetence and corruption. And what they showed time and again was that actually when they want to be competent, they can be really fucking competent. They can pull in these contracts, they can sign that off, get it out to this guy, construct a VIP fast lane. Everything moves like fucking lightning quick when it's somebody that donated 10 grand and they want 300 million back. Fucking nobody stands in the way to do that. They are competent AF. But when it's, I don't know, setting up something that might save a few lives, protecting the domestic population,
funding HMRC,
right? or telling HMRC to go after the fucking corporate tax evaders rather than go after the little guy who happens to have set up a fucking vintage shop. Like, I see you've made £300 that you haven't declared. Like, are you joking?
Yeah. And during COVID, right, at the time when we needed the fucking tax revenue, right, they cut 2,000 staff from HMRC.
Yeah.
Right? For every pound, and this is such a mind-blowing statistic, for every pound you spend on, like, obviously there's a point of diminishing returns, right? But for every pound initially that you invest in HMRC in, like, recuperating tax, you get £42 back.
Yeah.
Right? Just for like making sure people pay the tax they're meant to. And yet that's not the first thing that we do, right? When we think, how do we raise tax revenue? Nobody goes, let's fund HMRC. Nobody goes, let's close the tax loopholes. Let's let the big four accounting firms write the tax laws. You know, nobody says that. They're all like, wealth tax. Yes, wealth tax, that'll work. Because the people that we need to tax, they're already evading tax. So if we make a wealth tax, then they'll definitely pay it.
Well, I think, isn't the idea... So, yeah, I think when we talk about taxing the rich, there's always... there's sort of 2 or 3 ways that you could look at that. The first I think of is like corporation tax, like taxing big companies that have these sort of, you know, shell operations where they effectively pay like a rental back to the parent company that's based in Bermuda.
It's called transfer pricing.
Right.
So like so most of them are fucking based in Ireland. Right?
Are they?
Because there's, I think Apple pay like an effective 0.05% tax in Ireland.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that. I'll look it up later. But it's something like less than 1% effective tax rate for them. So Apple Ireland licenses all of the intellectual property to Apple America or Apple Great Britain or Apple Luxembourg, right? And then they basically pay them what amounts to their entire profit for the licensing. Yeah. And then they get the money to be taxed at 1% in Ireland. They declare 0 profits in the subsidiary. Yeah. And then they manage to shift almost all of the tax burden to somewhere where they're basically not paying any. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a situation now with Thames Water, right? I saw a tweet thread about this afternoon where they were saying Thames Water's got a debt of, what is it, like 16 billion or something? Like, they're really in the hole, right? Everybody's expecting it to result in a bailout. This lady was saying, I forget her name, something Coppola.
15.6 billion.
Is it? There we go. I forget the lady's name now. I was reading her thread and she was saying, you know, all of this money that they make, we rail against the fact that they pay dividends to their shareholders, but actually then, like, she had looked into the structure of it, and what they do is they send the money up to the parent company. The parent company has a board which then pays the shareholders. Thames Water itself, like exactly the same as what you're talking about with Apple, they effectively like siphon off all of the profits up here so that then Thames Water doesn't have to pay the taxes, right? So situations like that, when we talk about taxing the rich, I feel like that's one route that we need to, like, all of those loopholes need to be closed. I don't see any real credible reason why you could say, oh yeah, we should keep that open, it's good for business. You're not making any money out of that business, so let's shut that conversation down right away. Then you've got like rich people, wealthy people on like 100 grand, 150 grand who pay PAYE, but typically when you get to that sort of level, you're not paying PAYE anymore. Sorry, you have like a private limited company, and again, you're going to be drawing down dividends, so it's harder to tax that. Doesn't mean you couldn't do it. Then we get to the actual interesting stuff, which is I don't know if do you watch Gary's Economics?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, seems like a really nice guy. If you're watching Gary, I want to have you on.
Yeah, he seems like a good egg, and he obviously really knows his stuff.
And he worked in the financial industry for quite a while, right?
Yeah,
quite a number of years.
He was a trader with one of the big banks, and spent some time in Hong Kong by all accounts. And he talks a lot about taxing assets and how actually that is the route to raising money for the state. But he also talks a lot about like the last 100 years and how before the last 100 years actually it was like rich people and very, very poor people, and things like we've been lured into this sort of luxury era where we had a middle class where you actually had social mobility, and that's slowly being dwindled away, and the only real way to get that back is to tax fucking assets. So yeah,
I mean, I'm not sure about. I then get squirrely on like exactly how you tax the rich. I would like to start with close the tax loopholes. Taxing assets is more difficult because you have to decide at what level you tax those assets, because it's like, right, okay, someone say 20 years ago bought like for basic house at like 100 grand, and now it's worth 700 because of the obscene way that the UK housing market works, right? say you say, okay, all properties over $500,000 you're getting taxed on, and it's just some like little retired couple who bought at the right time, and suddenly they're having to pay like an annual tax on the price of their property because of that. So that's like where I get like, I'm like, is that the way to like actually target and raise revenue from people who are sitting on long-term generational wealth? That's like, mostly the problem is once you get to the level of people who wouldn't be damaged by a windfall tax like massively, or wouldn't be like, say they bumped up capital gains or something. The problem is because we have so many loopholes, like people who have like generational wealth, it's all in trusts. You can't touch it. Or it's like non-dom people, although that loophole is finally closed. But you know, there's like 500 others that you can use.
Why can you not tax a trust?
Because it depends on who the beneficial owner is. I'm not exactly 100% on things. So tell you what, let's ask ChatGPT.
Good old GPT.
Yeah.
Because I would have thought, so you need to draw it out, right? You're gonna have to draw it out somewhere at some point, probably within the United Kingdom. So even if the trust isn't based in the UK, they could put a transaction fee in there for trusts over the value of like 2 million. And the same thing like with families who bought a house for 20 grand and now it's worth 700. I feel like that's small fry. That's not the demographic of person that I would imagine that we would be going after if we did do some sort of asset tax. I'm thinking like the super rich, like people with a net worth of like 30 million upwards.
But they, like this is like the point that I keep getting stuck on. It's like, yeah, loopholes. They have the accountants who wrote the laws, who know the exact way to get around it. So here's what GPT says about the trusts. You can use it for estate planning. So irrevocable trusts can remove assets from an individual's taxable estate, potentially reducing estate taxes. So yeah, so basically you just like say, oh, I don't actually own any of this stuff. It's the trust.
Right.
Okay, which is, you know, held in beneficial ownership by my mother's like cousin second removes goat, and you know,
the goat model. Of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. Those nifty bastards.
Yeah, you can use income splitting, so trusts can distribute income to beneficiaries in lower tax brackets, reducing the overall tax burden. That's cool. That's a good idea, actually. I mean, that's awful and terrible.
Have you heard about the loan one? Like when people go and get a job at a company, but if they went on a PAYE contract, they would get like, you know, let's say 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year, and that's taxed at the higher rate. But instead, what they're talking about doing is going to the company and going, yeah, you could pay me 100 grand a year, but then you'll have to pay employers NI, and I'll have to pay NI. And so why don't you pay me in loans that you never expect to get back? And then it's tax free because you can't tax a loan. So yeah, sneaky. Yeah,
the other thing that it's saying here is like you can use generation skipping trusts to avoid estate taxes.
Right.
So you can leave something to your grandchildren.
So the grandfather leaves it to the grandchild.
Yeah, so it's like skipping a generation, and therefore it means that you can somehow avoid generational taxing. Anyway, this may, yeah. So that's just what it's saying. So I'm sure there's many other ways to set it up that's a thing, but it's this is the sort of stuff that I mean, and it's all built up around. I don't know if you've read the book Butler to the World. Is it Butler to the World? Yeah, Butler to the World by Oliver Bullock. Basically, he walks through how Britain is the financial enabler for all of the globe's worst people. Like, we are the place where you stash money or set up these like specific instruments like that allow you to hide things offshore, and that like for example, a lot of the basis of the 2008 crash was designed in London. Right. Like, they're the ones that came up with all of the shit that they ended up going, like, you know,
the subprime
to all of that, like and so it's bonkers to me to watch people just be like, I think you have to take like a genuine go and like, you need to change this tax system, because right now there's way too many loopholes, and I tend to operate generally on a theory that complexity allows for exploitation. Yeah. And the simpler a set of laws is, the less room for fuckery there is.
Yeah.
And especially in the financial system, because as soon as you see all the different like fucking like flows of money and the ways that things can be classified and done, it's just like there's so many like little tiny pockets for people to like slip into and you know, shave off a few bucks here and like fucking stash a little bit of money over here. Or
the thing about like the '08 crash that always gets me is, and I don't have an answer to this, but I'd be interested to get your thoughts. There is a narrative that was woven during that crash and after it, that in this country where we didn't really have subprime mortgages, that the reason that we were experiencing such a free fall in the markets was because we had 100% mortgages, and too many people had 100% mortgages. They were too easy to get, and so now after the crash, no more 100% mortgages. And I'm like, but I don't see how, like, in America, I get the whole subprime thing. Like, they had sort of, you know, credit rating A, like one of those in with a load of credit rating Fs, and then it would pull the average up, and then you buy that as a load of assets as an investor, and then actually a bunch of them default, right? That was the basis, the foundation of that whole crash.
Oh, yeah, but what they started doing was, instead of things being like AAA rated, like a bond that was say like AAA rated, like a mortgage-backed security, an MBS bond, instead of it all being AAA, at some point it just stopped being AAA, and they were just like they had no more people with solid incomes to give houses to, so they just started giving it to anyone. And if you see if the loan became toxic enough, right, they could just like take this massive pile of horrible loans that they'd given to people on, they're called ninja loans, no income, no job. Right, that's the type of loan you were getting, right?
Great idea.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
No income, no job, straight up introductory rate, variable rate things, and then like a year or 18 months later, the rates would kick up, and the mortgage payments would quadruple or quintuple.
But wait, what was the idea there?
So that basically what they were doing was like not just the mortgage-backed securities, but like the thing that made it way worse, right, was the thing called CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. So basically, you get like ratings from like A or AAA, AA, triple B, double B, B. Right, is like the credit rating. So there'd be a lot of like double Bs and Bs just getting shoved into this big monstrous pile of shit. Right, like an absolute like the worst loans you can possibly get. And as soon as that pile got big enough, it was considered by the ratings agencies to be diversified.
Right.
And they would come along and stamp a 93% AAA rating on this and just be like, it's great. Because the risk was considered so diversified because the huge fuck off pile of money. Right. That then, as soon as people were trading those like they were AAA backed mortgages, and they're not, they were dog shit. And that's what caused the monster house. It wasn't even the mortgage backed securities being bad. It was things like that, and then the derivatives market that built up around the CDOs. So people were taking shitty CDOs, chopping them up, and then putting them into other CDOs, and then betting on the performance of those CDOs. It's like, if you don't watch The Big Short, it does a fantastic job of explaining this stuff. Probably better than me. They have Margot Robbie and Selena Gomez and stuff explaining these things too, and people tend to pay attention when they're talking about it.
Sure.
But in the UK, I'd say it was more because the global economy is so inextricably linked to America. Like if America tanks, we tank. And also, did you see the bubble? Like people just pumping prices up, just speculating, and housing is, I'd say that the main problem is that housing was no longer seen as the thing that you live in, but an asset to speculate on. And like there's a place in Aldgate, and I can't remember, maybe it was you that was telling me this. But when we were at the fuck the Tories party the other night, that it's empty. It's brand new, built, full of apartments. Maybe it was Dave. Empty. All speculators.
Oh, right. Like people just bought it as an investment property. And then, so my understanding of this is that this all goes back to like the bond market. So back in the day, you would have pensioners who would either through their financial advisor or directly, they would invest in bonds because it was like a safe investment for your autumn years. You put X amount of money in and then you got guaranteed income for the next 15, 20 years. And then you get the original amount back and your kids can inherit it.
You get like 3-4%, like clockwork.
But then bonds started to pay less and less. And so a lot of pensioners, when pensions were deregulated, a lot of pensioners were like, well, I'll just take out 100 grand or 200 grand. I'll buy an investment flat. And so then that ate up more and more of the market, because if you buy like a 2-bed flat and you rent it out and that pays you double what you would have made back out of the bond, it's a no-brainer. It's like, well, I want to retire and have some sort of comfort. So yeah, like industrially, a load of oldies bought up investment flats. And then I guess, yeah, that sort of contributed or aggravated the situation further. But just to go back to the 100% mortgage thing, is like, it seems to me like that was removed from the market. And that's such a key component of social mobility in this country, was the idea that in a market, in a country where it's almost impossible to save up enough money for a deposit, that you could still go into a bank and say, I've got a 40 grand salary. Can I borrow 4.5 times that? There's a 1-bed flat down the road. I'd like to buy it. And then I'll sell it in 5 years. We would have made a bit of money. And then we've got that's how my mum got on the ladder in like 94. So to then use the global financial crash, which is rooted in subprime, as an excuse to then permanently remove 100% mortgages, even now, even after the housing market arguably recovered, just seems like a hooky reason to stop people buying houses, maybe in an attempt to sort of to stop aggravating the housing crisis further. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's trash. I think that honestly, you should be able to probably just use your proof. Like, I think that the multiplication of your salary isn't as a way to judge how much you should be able to borrow for your mortgage. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible way to look at it. I think what should be looked at is like, okay, over X time horizon, 20, 30 years, how much is the monthly payment? How much have you paid? How much can you prove you can cover, for example, in rent? And that should be it.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the payments?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you cover said payments? Can you prove you've covered said payments by showing me 2 years worth of rent slips that you've paid?
Yeah.
And that should be it. Because that's the only thing that matters. And that would get so many people on the housing market or on the housing ladder. Like, so many people that are renting. Because every single person that I know, once they get to that point where they're like able to afford to buy something eventually, like it's happening later and later in people's lives.
Yeah.
They pay like half in their mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would we not want to encourage that for people? Because surely, if you're looking for a way to put more money in a lot of people's pockets, people who are like 20 to 35 who'd like to buy a property, maybe at some point like to have a family, giving them some extra cash and the ability to have a stable home and asset that will probably like increase in value over time is the perfect way to do it. These like, and this goes back to what we were saying right at the start about the competence and like the actual desire to help out the people of this country. That's what's genuinely missing that's what was missing from 14 years of the Tories. Like, Tony Blair, for all his faults, and there are many, seemed like he was at least somewhat concerned with improving the well-being of people in the nation, even if that was solely so he got re-elected, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't that what politicians should be trying to do? Shouldn't they be trying to do the things that the electorate will find good to get voted in again? And this is what I'm concerned we won't see from Keir Starmer.
Right.
I think it's going to be optics and focus groups and little tweaks around the edges.
PR.
When everyone that's not a fucking centrist, like PR, everyone that's not a fucking centrist realizes that there's the need for some radical fucking change, whether they're on the left or the right. You know, something has to give. We can't just like keep chugging along with like not making massive changes to things that are clearly broken.
Well, yeah, so I accept that we need more radical change. I just don't have really any fucking hope that it could ever be implemented. And I shall tell you why. I'll tell your viewers and listeners why, Josh. Because the national debt is so high now. It was 100% of our GDP in like November last year, October. I don't know if it's been brought slightly under that or if it's still about 101%. So the only way you can get that down and then get people's taxes down and allow them a higher standard of living is to get growth. And the only feasible, realistic way of achieving growth at the moment is to rejoin the single market. And Keir Starmer has made it abundantly clear that he has no aspiration to rejoin the single market, and he doesn't think we will rejoin the EU in his lifetime. So in the absence of rejoining the single market, we're not going to get growth. We're not going to magic the national debt down, which means taxes aren't going to come down. The only other ways that you could get growth is to increase net migration substantially, bring loads of people in, work.
That's fake growth. That's not real growth.
Well, it would increase money.
It would increase GDP.
It would. So people would come in, they would earn money, it would be taxed, it would go in the coffers, right? So as long as it's a net benefit, which I think the stats have shown that high immigration does provide a net benefit, then you would start to see.
In terms of tax revenue, definitely. I mean, yeah. I question whether overall it's a good idea, because I feel like it's a supply and demand thing, in the same way that like the housing market has been screwed by like speculators buying up loads of housing and governments failing to build any. Wages are informed by how many people are like pursuing a job and what the minimum that they were willing to accept will be.
Right.
And I think by like massively increasing the workforce without investment to the point where you need the workforce to expand, that you're not going to see any real growth, especially for people who are like competing for the lowest like paid jobs. I feel like what it does is it floods the market with loads of people competing for like, and it's because the middle class has been shrinking and that like bottom has been growing, like increasingly so under the Tories. And I think immigration is a plaster that doesn't actually fix the problem. I think that you're right about that like rejoining the single market would improve GDP. Yeah. But I don't think it's the only way. I think you need government to build things. Like it's the thing that's been proven throughout history to improve the economy is to like take the like, yeah, okay, debt's at 100%, right? Well, fuck it, right? It's already at 100%, you know? Like, what's another 20%? No, really, right? Yeah. Okay, really, what's another 20% on that?
Borrow.
Right? Borrow, go for it. You know, we've fucking said we're going to do anything. We owe ourselves the money. I mean, you have to go real deep on like monetary theories. Like, who do we really owe the money to? And like, but
we're bond investors mostly. But yeah,
but like, take some of that money, and this is like, there's a group called Positive Money who like argue for this. Take that fucking like investing power, and instead of investing in assets at the top of the stock market, right, invest at the bottom of the economy where the people need the money. Like, go and like, okay, go build stuff, like build some fucking new hospitals, build new hospitals, build bridges, I don't give a fuck what it is, schools, things we need, like train stations, like rail networks, like go say, okay, anyone that wants can get insulation on their house. Do you know how many fucking builders and contractors would be like swimming in money because people like want insulation in their house? And that was a promise that Boris made, the one that I was like, oh my god, he's actually going to do something good, and then they reneged on it.
So I have also been down this road, and it leads to a dark place, Josh. So I also agree that if you borrowed substantial amounts of money and then invested today in the infrastructure and like other services as well, like I always bang on my channel about socializing childcare, because you have this huge like untapped workforce of fed up, tired parents stuck in their 2-bed houses or 2-bed flats who really want to go back to work and increase productivity and more NI and more tax coming into the coffers, but they can't. Whereas in other countries, they do have socialized childcare. It's seen as part of the infrastructure. So you could borrow to socialize childcare, and then that money would come back. And all the stats about socializing childcare say you would get 12 billion back in the treasury if you did it. So that's a no-brainer. So if you did stuff like that also with other areas of the infrastructure, then I accept that at some point it would come back in GDP and growth. However, I also have no hope about that, because I think by the time it did come back, like if you went out borrowing now and you said, I want to borrow another 40 billion, 60 billion to invest in infrastructure, the investors would go, okay, well, we could buy a bond from the UK, or we could buy one from Germany, or we could buy one from Zimbabwe or US or where. So like,
we don't need the bond. This is what I mean about you have to go deep on monetary theory. And like, obviously there's some debate about how real this is. We don't need the bondholders, right?
Right.
It's our money. This is one of the beauties of having the pound.
But
right?
it's not if you borrow the money, like you're borrowing it off bond
We're
investors.
borrowing it anyway. No, but like we're not borrowing it off bond investors.
So
right?
we're magicking it?
We are magicking it. They literally no. This is the point, and this
Okay.
this blows my fucking mind, and I still struggle to really properly get my head around it. But I've
Right.
talked to enough people about it that I vaguely get it.
Okay.
They're going whenever the Bank of England wants to put more money into the bond market through quantitative easing. They literally go to their fucking computer and they just go ding 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 ding. Yeah,
Yeah.
5 billion. Yeah, that'll do. Done. Okay.
Right.
It's just like,
I know.
right. There's nothing back in it. There's
Yeah.
nothing. Right. So just here's what you do. You go to the same computer and you go.
Yeah.
Okay. 5 billion new 5 new hospitals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Done.
Okay. So that sounds really easy, right?
It is, right?
But-
and this is the bonkers thing about it. Like, all you need is a government that's willing to not be beholden to the way that the financial system has functioned for the last 100 years, the post-Bretton Woods system. Like, you just need to go, no.
Do you have any concerns that the last time the Bank of England went to a computer and then went dup, 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 bop, like that to create 26 billion, which is nowhere near what you would need to socialize childcare, to build infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. The last time they did that, the markets were so spooked, it resulted in the trust to fuck Quartang
Yeah,
thing.
but that's because it came from a bunch of idiots, right? A bunch,
Right.
yeah, like, who had no idea what they were fucking talking about. They were like jacking themselves off on the most libertarian, stupid, like
it's
Friedman-esque
still-
budget that you've seen.
it's
They
still
didn't go to
magic
the
money,
computer
right?
and go, okay,
No.
we're going to build some hospitals. They went, tax cuts.
Yeah.
Like, that's totally different.
But is it? Because what they're saying is we're going to fund these tax cuts by the money that will end up coming back through VAT and people buying more holidays and cars and so on. If we cut their taxes, it will come back around. What you're saying is if you magic this money and build the infrastructure, then that will come back around.
It's not even come back around. It's like, right, okay, where's when you buy, when say the government like pumps money in and buys bonds from some bondholders or like fucking investments in like pension funds, right, in order to flood money into the system, right?
Yeah.
Who gets that money? The bondholders or the pension funds, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Say you turn around and go, okay, we want to build a hospital.
Yeah.
Or we want to insulate people's houses. Okay. Who gets the money? The people doing the insulating of the houses. It goes into like, this is what that group Positive Money argue for. It's like the money goes into the real economy. Do you know how much like that cycles through like 2-3 times in a year? Like there's just more money at the bottom instead of it being injected at the top, where you then get the trickle down that doesn't fucking arrive.
Yeah.
Because all we did through like the massive expansion of the money supply through COVID and stuff was just pay billionaires.
Yeah.
And
Rich
inflate
people
the
get
asset prices. Like we saw the biggest upward transfer of wealth in human history over those couple of years. And I would just love to take a little bit of that money creation power and like pump it into things that we actually fucking need.
I mean, I'm here for the enthusiasm of it, Josh. I am. I would really worry if Rachel Reeves came out the door of number 11 tomorrow and said, we're going to magic like 50 billion and use it to invest in infrastructure. Although, like, I want them to invest in infrastructure, but my concern is, even though we have the aspiration to not be beholden to the markets and the global financial ecosystem,
fuck 'em.
I think investors would flee, the pound would tank, bonds would shake and pensions would wobble, and then the Bank of England would be forced to then magic another load of magic. Like it could become such a spiral of chaos. And I've lived through one like trust a fuck mortgage outgoing doubling situation. I would like, without getting too emo about it, I was at my the back door of my house looks over like this decking bit, and I was watching my kids play in the back garden patio with a hose pipe, like just spraying each other, completely innocent. And I burst into tears because this was like just as our mortgage repayments were about to double and go from like £900 a month to £2,000 a month. And they just looked so oblivious to oblivion. And I was so fucking angry about it. I wrote this tweet thread and I said, you know, I like normally on Twitter, I'm just a massive fucking piss taker. I just, you know, rail and roast and clap back to Tories and
I said, follow you, right?
Right. But I said, you know, I very rarely like write serious stuff on here, but I said like I'm looking out on my kids, and they have no idea of like the financial chaos that we're in at the moment. I have no idea if we're going to hold on to this house. I mean, like there's tears running down my face, and I said like, you know, I might have to sell this place. My in-laws might have to make some really drastic financial decisions, and it really shakes me, the idea that if we did, like whichever party it is, if we did then magic like 20, 30, 40, 50 billion, like what would that do to, I mean, look, we're actually in an all right situation now. Things did get handled one way or the other, thanks to nobody in government or anyone else, like literally just down to family stepping in. But what would happen to like another 10,000 families, 50,000 families, you know?
Yeah. I mean, just for the maths, 50 billion would be 5% more. So what's 100 to 105% of GDP debt? Like,
Yeah.
is this where the MMT people, like, I think they might have a point. It's like, look, I don't think fiat money is fantastic because it's backed by nothing. I'd love us to go back on the gold standard. I feel like that might solve some of the inflation problems.
Yeah.
Or back on some form of standard.
Do you think they have enough gold for us to marry up what they say is like?
That's a whole nother question. But like, I think they like, well, the pound was backed by silver, not gold, actually, for quite a long time. So just back it with something physical. Like personally, I feel like that would solve a lot of the inflation problems.
I feel like if we didn't have enough gold to back it, we could just go and invade some more countries and loot their jewels and stuff. I mean, that is the British way. We could just, if we can't back it yet.
Well, like I think BRICS are lining up a something backed currency.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're trying to rival SWIFT, and people are trying to come up with something that's going to, you know, rival the US dollar. And the Saudi Arabians and the Chinese are buying up gold like it's going out of fucking fashion. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, you know, audit the Fed.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Find out how much is in Fort Knox, really.
Do you think, here's a wild question for you. Do you think, given that the national debt is so high,
I think we should just cancel it because we owe it to ourselves.
but, well, sort of what I'm getting onto, could you imagine a situation where technology has advanced this far and the debt has advanced that far that a UK government, whether it's Conservative or Labour, would ever go, do you know what? Bitcoin, like new crypto.
Yeah, I mean,
Bitcoin there's no debt attached to it. Just sorry you lost out if you bought a bond, but that's all dead now. Like,
it's really terrifying. That's how they're going to do it. Bitcoin is already proposed and moving forwards. Yeah, Rishi Sunak proposed it. I mean, there's like 40 something different countries working on central bank digital currencies. I think we talked about this before because it's very because I'm terrified about the idea that the government can have programmable money. Because do you know what? One of the features that they keep talking about is that like the money could have an expiration date. That's the worst one. So they could say, here's your Bitcoin. It's good for 2 months.
Yeah.
Spend.
Yeah. What about assets? They can have an expiration day?
No.
Got to liquidate them.
It would just be the coin.
But also,
like,
there'd be like tiers of like currency. So like rich people would have like their own Bitcoin, like the premium.
Yeah, it'll be called Bitcoin. Like,
we all get shitcoin, just as
Buckcoin.
pleb coin.
Pleb coin.
POV coin.
No, we'll
There
get
you go.
Ethereum. You know, we'll get some stupid Ethereum backed like central bank digital currency, and it'll be It's the my fears are that they will bring something like that in, even though no one's ever given me a reason that it's a good idea for anyone. Like they will just bring it in because that's the thing you do, and then it's not only you can set expiration dates on it, you can program it to say here's what you should spend your money on. Like you could foresee a conservative government being like, oh, well, you can't spend the money at like pro-Palestine shops.
Yeah.
That's where it gets concerned, because everyone thinks, oh, you're thinking that like, they'll try and make you like stop you buying meat or something like that. That would concern me. Or like, you got carbon credits that you can spend on your coin this month, or like that's the thing that most people rant about. But like, you got to look at it from the other side. It's like, what if the Tories say you can't buy from pro-Palestine things? You can't. Anyone associated with Just Stop Oil won't be able to accept payments. Or that's how you slide into the China style like social credit system, even if it never goes as extreme as China, because like obviously they can get away with a lot being dictators. Like here, we can vote people out, but I can see them like us like sliding in that direction.
I think you're right to fear that. And I could like the way that they would do it is they would slowly bring it in as a sort of national security measure. They would say, if you are in any way affiliated with this group of people, well, they are really supportive of Hamas. So therefore, we're going to cancel your fucking crypto account or, whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah, your Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah, cancel culture would, say what you like about it, but it would explode under a system like that.
Yeah, I don't like the government having that power. I think it's a bad idea. I think they should have quite a lot of power, because we need them to be able to do the things that like the massive investments in like infrastructure that I would like them to do. But I think
well, you're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place then, aren't you? Because the crypto movement, if they did invent their own new currency and all of the bonds were in sterling, you could free us up from the national debt, and then you would have your money to just invest in everything.
True. Well, I mean, I mean, the UK government should definitely be dollar cost averaging Bitcoin, like a little bit.
I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
Buying a small amount every month, as like so that you're not like impacted by price fluctuations as you like slowly accumulate your holdings.
Okay.
Because Germany have like 2.4 billion in Bitcoin, like that they confiscated in a criminal case. They just sold like a little bit of it, but they've still got most of it, and they're in profit with it as well, which is hilarious. So I feel like countries should be buying up these assets, because they're actually on like the long term, I would say, more fucking stable than most of the fiat currencies, even though like you can like look at it be like nuts over like 10 years, but the last year or two, like Bitcoin hasn't actually fluctuated that much, really.
I could never go for Bitcoin again after I got in there early, and I had this system where instead of buying myself a cup of coffee in the cafeteria in the place that I worked, I would go on my phone. This is back in the day. I can't remember the name of the app now. This is like years ago. I thought, instead of buying a coffee, I'll just spend £3.50 on more Bitcoin, like every day. And it got to like £400 worth of Bitcoin. And I was like, this is all right. And I could see like the value of it going up and up. And this was like right at the beginning of that wave where it really started to take off. And it went from like £400 to something like 1,300, 1,400 really quickly. And my girlfriend at the time was pregnant with our first kid. And we were like, should we go on a baby moon holiday in France? And I was like, yeah. I said, I got this Bitcoin thing. I said, so if you sort the flights, I'll sort the spending money while we're there. It's just a week. So then we're all getting excited to go, and I've got my crypto ATM card, and we're packing our suitcases and stuff. And literally the night before, this was the thing where Visa withdrew the license from the crypto company or something.
Yeah.
And my fucking ATM, the crypto thing, just didn't work. I couldn't withdraw anything. I was like, how do I transfer this to, like, there's no way you can transfer it. They're not accepting SEPA transfers or something. And I had to turn around to my pregnant girlfriend, my angry pregnant girlfriend, Josh, and go, I said I was going to pay for everything with this Bitcoin for a week. Just keep the hormones at bay for a sec, because this is going to upset you. And Yeah, so I got burnt, man.
Not your keys, not your coins. That's the lesson I learned from watching people get fucked by FTX. I was very lucky that I didn't have money on that exchange in particular. And as soon as things started happening, I just like I have nothing on exchange now. If I buy something, I wait until I have enough that I can buy it, withdraw it from the exchange, that the gas fees to take it from the exchange to my wallet aren't like cripplingly high. You just make sure I've got it's enough to make it worth it. And then I just get straight out of there. I have no interest in trusting any of those bastards. It was the Wild West, and I can't believe I got lucky enough to not have been screwed, because I know people who got fucked for tens of thousands.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They were stupid enough to have it on FTX, or on any of the exchanges that went
I bet
down.
there's some fucking horror stories that we'll never actually get to hear of people who took out loans on their house, put it, I'm riding the crypto wave.
Oh yeah, definitely. People just
and then all gone.
Yeah.
Almost
definitely.
Maybe 50, 100 grand. I mean,
go visit Wall Street Bets. You don't even need to look at people doing crypto stuff, or to see people just, they take their entire inheritance and go, okay, this stock calls tomorrow. If it comes off, I'm a billionaire. If not, I'm broke.
Yeah.
And they just go for it. It's.
I mean,
no, there's a culture.
Live every day like it's your last.
Yeah, tell me about it. Anyway, we are very fast approaching an hour, and I know that you would like to go home to your family at some point.
Yes.
That's what he told me to say.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'll have an angry girlfriend again. Not pregnant though at the moment, so.
Yeah. I did want to talk more about reform, but I'll have to save that for super
time. Well, if you want to come on my show at some point, we can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm loving watching people's unbelievably stupid takes from all sides of it. The reform being I can't believe the voting system is so corrupt. And it's no shit, Sherlock. We've all lived in the same country. You've lived here 3 times as long as I have.
Yeah.
And then we all know how it works. Why does this stun you? And then the other side, people being 25% of the country is clearly just obscenely racist. I'm
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I despair at the level of support that Reform have managed to garner, but at the same time, I remind myself that, there's a lot of deprived towns out there that have been forgotten. A lot of those towns, when they're on the coast, they're full of old, decrepit hotels. Those hotels are cheap to rent, and so the Home Office...
they've all been turned into...
send a lot of, if you are somewhat insular, and you've never seen a brown person before or whatever, and you read the Daily Mail, and then the next door you've got a load of asylum seekers who are broke and hungry and desperate. I can understand kind of how those. No,
I don't think it's about not having seen it. Someone from foreign countries or anything. I don't think it's anything to do with that.
No.
I think it's a case of they watch that we give them basic respect, amenities, and welfare, very basic and incredibly basic. If you look at the fucking barge that's parked off the south coast, which is just a horrendous human rights violation in itself. But people look at that and then they turn around and they go, well, okay, why are they getting more than us?
Yeah,
I've lived here for 25 years. I've paid my tax, and yet I feel like we should all be entitled to that. Why aren't we?
Yeah.
That's why people get angry, I think. That they feel like it's a zero-sum game, and it's it's me or it's them. When I don't think that's the reality. But that's why I think people voted in large swathes for reform.
Do you think there's a politainment element of it where
just what Farage is entertaining?
Yeah, he's a showman.
Definitely.
And people being on the winning side, and they see him as the upstart, right?
Yeah, it's the underdog.
Yeah.
In a way.
And I think they're angry. Excuse me. I think they're angry at the status quo and having been forgotten, and all of the deprivation and the jealousy that you're talking about. But I also think, I think when there's a new show in town like Reform or Newish, and you've got someone like Farage up front, loving the cameras, and there's all this enthusiasm and media coverage behind him.
I think there's
he is
entertaining.
Yeah,
I have to say.
But there's a like, people like to be on the winning team, and they sense that is where things are going. So even though his policies and narratives and rhetoric and everything is actually very, very similar to people like Suella Braverman, they don't rally behind Suella Braverman in the same way that they do him, because they sense that she's on her way out and he is the new kid on the block, right? So
Well, I also think that she's like genuinely bigoted, whereas I don't think Farage is. I just don't get that impression. I don't think for him. I think for him and for like a lot of like the reform vote and all the people who stood, real or not.
yeah.
I think it's more about what I said. It's about like that people feel like they're being shortchanged compared to like the way we're looking after asylum seekers, which is like, obviously we have to do the things that we are obligated to do under the Geneva Convention and under just like basics of,
Humane treatment. Yeah.
And I think that people would just like the same care taken about those deprived communities. I think people want to feel like someone gives a fuck about them.
Isn't it interesting though? Like just quickly, and then I will have to run out the door. But you've got these right-leaning parties who ideologically would be opposed to giving these people the services for which they crave. And yet they run to them as though they are the solution for the deprivation and the austerity that they've been saddled with for the last 20 years. So they're operating in a sort of deprived seaside town, rightly angry at how they've been treated and forgotten, but yet this austerity, this small state ideology and mean-spirited small c conservatism is then repackaged to them as we've got to leave the ECHR. He's got a phone and you don't. It's bizarre to me that, and look, I know not everyone's as politically aware, or people don't read all of the newspaper; they just look at the headlines and all that stuff.
Do you know what I think it is? I think like deep down, people know exactly what you're saying is correct. And the thing that I keep seeing as the response to this sort of like thing, at least on X and from speaking to people about it, is that they are like, well, no one else is even acknowledging that this is a problem. They're told, shut up, you're racist. And it's like, it's either go for the party that's telling you you're the problem, or you go for the party that's acknowledging there is something that needs to be addressed. And that's why I strongly advocate for this massive spending, because I'm like, build some shit.
But then to me,
build some shit.
You don't sound a million miles away from reform, because Titus is talking about like cancelling the QE payments to use that money to. I don't even know what he wants to use it, like public service.
But there's like reforms policies, like on the political compass, are all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, do you know, like they got some very left wing things, there's very right wing things, like things that are really stupid, like please don't privatize the NHS. Like, please don't give them more of it, because like.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I stand on and I fall on any of these issues anymore in terms of a party to vote for, because I just don't like any of them. They're all trying to screw you on something. Like,
Now we've reversed positions. Now you have no hope.
This is what you've done to me. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure.
So things to plug.
Come and, but like, if you found anything of what I've said in even mildly stimulating, then come and check out my podcast. It's Aid Thompsin and Other Disappointments. I also do the alternative paper review most mornings. Both of those are available on YouTube. And that's pretty much it.
Wonderful. Well, thanks very much, man.
Thank you. Cheers.
Hey, listeners, real quick. Do you ever find yourself sitting watching the stock market like this? Well, now you could instead be ordering my book like this. It's the story of GameStop. You can purchase it with a hoodie, with acknowledgements, or just with the early backers edition. It's all about the GameStop story. It's the real story, not just what you've seen on films. It's exactly what has happened over the last 3.5 years. And with DFE back, I'm finally able to draw a conclusion to my book. Please pre-order it. It really helps me out. And you will get it eventually, I promise. Hopefully this year.